Hello, hello, and guten Morning. I don't know German. I don't know why I attempted that, but good morning. Either way, I think I got the message across that I wish to say good morning. Hello. Hope you all are doing well on this hello. God, I don't get paid enough to speak in uwu. You gotta pay extra for that. I'm sorry. But yeah. Dang. I honestly had no idea that today was St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. Thank you for reminding me that that is today. Yeah. As you can see, we are still continuing on our good friend, Mr. Goof. Last okay, first time on YouTube, we completed the torso. I still love like fidgeting with this, the little pilot hatch. It's so oh, it's tomorrow. Okay. So I'm good. I didn't forget. Excellent. Yeah. Good to know. Tomorrow. Patrick's Day. I don't know, man. I'm not someone that can even pretend that I'm remotely Irish, so I just support those that do. But yeah. It's goof time. We're just gonna die. Wait, what? Tomorrow? I think so. That's what's happening. Did I already put that? Oh, I did. A1. There are people on the train wearing green already. Yeah, I'm not surprised. People be celebrating. It's a Saturday. People be celebrating. But speaking of holidays, I'm Irish, but I don't celebrate the day that celebrates the driving out of pagans from Ireland. Oh, I'm just nice and don't complain at people. Oh, okay. I didn't know that's what St. Patrick's Day was. Man, that kind of sucks. That sucks. That sucks for the pagans of Ireland. Yeah, that's fair. That's kind of fascinating though, to know like the history of holidays. Yeah, not a lot of people do. Yeah, that's pretty interesting though to know like the history of holidays and why they are the way they are. Speaking of holidays, it's why if someone says it to me, I don't worry about it. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's good. But yeah, this week Ramadan has started. Started on Monday, and I have been observing as I don't know if any of you know this, but I'm Muslim. I mean, unless you've been watching me since last year's Ramadan. But I observe Ramadan, and which means you will not be seeing me sipping from my water bottle, which means you will not be seeing me sipping from my water bottle. It used to be somewhat relevant because there used to be a Twitch redeem that was like reminding me to hydrate and whatnot, and I remember Heather had to turn it off during Ramadan because like I could not fulfill it. I could not fulfill it. But we don't have that here on the YouTube, so it's not as relevant, but I still wanted to mention it. Because it is something relevant to me as a person. It is something relevant to me as a person. Also just realized I totally forgot to post the stream link on my own Twitter. I did forget to do that. You see, sometimes I'm not a very good streamer, in the sense that I'm not very good at promoting my own stream. Okay, excellent, excellent. But yes, anyway, today can kind of be the Ramadan episode a little bit, in the sense that I talk about it and explain what it is, because I've learned a lot of people don't really know what it is, slash, like, I don't know, man, I get questions about it pretty often from just, like, people around me, and they're like, oh, you know, Ramadan, what is that? What do you do? What does it entail? Why do you do it? Like, you know, the standard stuff, and I don't mind talking about it, you know? So I will take this opportunity. I'll take this opportunity to talk about it, and so hopefully you guys can learn a little bit and know what Ramadan is and what it's like. The basics is that it is a month-long holiday. Where's the C one? It is a month-long holiday. It lasts for 30 days. And it means that it entails for those 30 days, those who observe are not allowed to eat or drink or really consume anything at all for the duration of sunrise to sunset. So while the sun is up, no eating, no drinking. It also involves like casting out of like sinful behaviors, and that's where it starts to go up to interpretation. That's where it starts to go to interpretation, because some people interpret sinful behavior as like, I mean, of course, there's the pretty well accepted quote unquote sinful behaviors, but some people also extend it to like no swearing. Some people even extend it to like no secular music too. You know, it really depends on your personal interpretation and whatnot. Like, I don't interpret it to include music because I would die without music. But it involves casting out sinful behaviors for the duration of the whole month. Which is why if you ever go to a majority Muslim country and you wait until 9 months after Ramadan, there are no kids being born, because it's you're not supposed to, even if you're married. Same thing with like, but yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but basically, no eating or drinking, at least from sunrise to sunset, and casting out a sinful behavior. It lasts for 30 days. And you just do it every day. Do it every day. The time of year at which Ramadan happens it changes, because Islam uses the lunar calendar. Islam abides by the lunar calendar, which means because it follows like the moon, the time of year during which Ramadan happens shifts. It's roughly 2 weeks back. It shifts roughly 2 weeks every year. Like, it just keeps going. Like, last year it was in like April, May, and then the year before that it was like more May, June. And now this year it just started this week, so in the month of March. And then next year it'll probably even be starting in February. That's just how it goes. And before anyone asks, it's like, yeah, there are exceptions to it. Obviously, like, most people start fasting around when they come of age. Like, absolutely, people don't expect, like, children to fast for Ramadan. Sometimes older kids are, when I say come of age, usually that's like 13, 14-ish. Usually around 13, 14 is when people start fasting for Ramadan. But sometimes kids, even as early as like around 10, will maybe try fasting for a couple days just to get an idea of it before they start doing it for the whole month by the time they're like 13, 14. But for the most part, it's not like kids need to fast. You're absolutely not supposed to. Same thing with the elderly. If it negatively, or pregnant women, like, if it negatively impacts your health, you are not supposed to fast. It's not that, like, insane. It's not that insane. As long as you are of sound body and mind to fast, you do. And same thing, like, there's also exceptions, like if you take medications and stuff like that, you're also allowed to do that. You're also allowed to do that. That's generally how that works, so it's not like that insane. But for the most part, yeah, it does sound kind of Spartan to say, like, I don't eat or drink water throughout the duration of the day and for 30 days. And it's not easy, but I've been doing it since I was like 13, 14-ish. It's one of those things you kind of get used to it, and also it's better or worse depending on the time of year. Like a couple years back, for a couple years, Ramadan fell during the summer solstice, and it sucked. It was terrible. It was so bad because it was just like, oh, it's like, I don't know how long days are, but it was like sunrise was at like 4:30 in the morning, and then sunset wasn't until like 8 p.m., 8:30 p.m., and it just sucked. It just sucked. But now Ramadan has shifted up to March, and it's kind of crazy. I was like checking the sunrise times, and it's like, oh, sunrise is at like 7:15 a.m. or it's like 7 a.m. and I'm like, oh, that's not that bad actually. That's not that bad. That's pretty doable. And then sunset is like, I don't know, 7 or 8 p.m. It's still kind of late, but not super. Like, it's still like 7 p.m. and there's sunlight out. But, you know. But obviously, as the months wears on, it will only get longer, which, rest in peace. That's just how life works. But it is cool and fun and funky. And as for why Ramadan is celebrated in the first place, it has to do with, I mean, obviously, it's like the spiritual core is like supposed to demonstrate faith in God. I'm just gonna like talk about Islam a little bit, not trying to be like, I'm going to talk about it the way it was explained to me when I was young. So from the perspective of like being Muslim. So like keep that in mind. I'm not going to be speaking super objectively. But yeah. It's supposed to be fundamentally demonstrating faith in God and thankfulness towards the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And generally, the origin story is basically the Prophet Muhammad was stuck in a desert for 30 days with no food or water, and just through the strength of God, he was able to survive. That's the story that was told to me when I was a kid at Muslim Sunday school. And that's why we celebrate Ramadan for 30 days. Obviously, we're not all prophets, so for us it's just from sunrise to sunset. But it's still about getting the idea of it, of like no food or water, but subsisting basically on your faith. And that's generally the idea of Ramadan, why it's celebrated, and why we do that, and why it's 30 days long. And so, that's that. That's the Ramadan episode. That's the Ramadan episode. Because, I don't know, I usually like explaining it a little bit, because people usually have questions about it. If you guys have any other questions about Ramadan, please let me know. Not even just Ramadan, you can ask about like Islam, whatever the heck you want. I'm not like a super religious Muslim. I'm not a turbo religious Muslim, but I do still consider myself a practicing one. Like, my household growing up wasn't a super strict. Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad you guys are like listening. Thank you for sharing your experience. Ramadan isn't talked about enough, so people don't understand or even know much. I remember only a few years ago, my coworker was observing in August. Yeah. That's kind of why I like talking about it, because not a lot of people talk about it. And whenever I mention that I am observing it, people always ask me like, oh, is it really like you don't eat or drink? Like, do you really do that? Like, how long does it last? And like, I don't think they're malicious. I don't mind at all answering questions. Genuinely, I can tell, like, there's nothing wrong with asking questions, because I feel like sometimes people are afraid of asking questions about, like, things like Ramadan and Islam and things like that, because, you know, I understand the fear of, like, being offensive and whatnot, and not wanting to be perceived as ignorant. But the thing is, I don't think that's, like, inherently a bad thing, as long as you're coming from a place of genuine curiosity. I absolutely don't mind at all, like, talking about my experience, answering any questions people may have, like, yeah. And I enjoy talking about it, because it means I like sharing, as anything that makes people more aware of the world, I think that's a good thing. And I like that I have the ability to be a part of that. Be part of like expanding people's worldviews. Because yeah, I grew up in the I too grew up in the American education system, you know? I remember when I was in like my high school history class, like, 15, 16 in high school history, and they were teaching us about Islam, as high school level social studies does. And it was very basic. Like, even then, my teacher was like she was a very young teacher, so it's not like she's this kind of old conservative or anything like that. She was just like a pretty normal lady. She was like pretty nice. She was very nice too. She's like a very nice normal lady, and she was just trying to teach us the basics of like the history of the Middle East and other religions and whatnot. But even then, like, there were still flaws in how it was taught. I remember at one point she asked the class, like, oh, did you do the reading? Like, what does jihad mean? Which is kind of a loaded, it's a loaded term in the sense of the modern Western age, I would say. And, some kid raised his hand and was like, jihad means holy war. And she was like, yep, that's correct. And because I was like probably the only Muslim in that class, because I grew up in a very predominantly white area. I was like, wait a second, that's not like entirely correct, which is true. It's not. A lot of people kind of have that misconception of like jihad just means holy war, or whatever people have decided it. Well, it's not necessarily. So it's a bit more broad than that, because a lot of very bad people have used it as an excuse to do very bad things. But what I was taught, in my like Islamic education is like, and also what is written about it in Islamic text is that jihad just means like religious conflict. It doesn't necessarily mean like fighting and war waged in the name of your religion. It more just defines any type of religious conflict, which means it can be people disagreeing on interpretations of scripture. It can even mean like internal conflict of, individuals can experience jihad just in the sense of like questioning their faith and how it defines them. It's a very broad term that just means religious conflict. It's the kind of thing that I feel like is also, it's a concept that I feel like is also apparent in other religions. It also exists in other religions. Like, religious conflict has always been a thing amongst humans that have religious beliefs. And in Islam, there's just a word for it that is in Arabic, which means it's like, oh my god, people don't know what it means. It's in Arabic. But it just means like religious conflict. And that's just like, if I hadn't been there, if I hadn't corrected them, like, that whole entire class, including that teacher, that whole entire class of like, what, 20-something teenagers would have just gone on assuming that it means like religious war, and that like we have a whole word just for religious war. And it would have contributed to that perception people have of Islam and Muslims in general. And, it's rough. And I do like that I have the ability to like expand, because of course, like, once I corrected it, people were like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, no one was like mean to me about it. It was very clearly just from a place of genuine ignorance. Because when you look at like how a lot of American education and a lot of American media depicts Islam, that is how it is, And so, which is why I like talking about my experience, and I like talking about things that maybe are not as talked about as much, because it means I can expand people's worldview. And because of that, I think especially in like the modern age, people are afraid of offending others, which is not a bad fear to have. Obviously, it's good to care about people and not want your fellow man to feel bad. But I do think at the same time, it stops people sometimes from, like, expanding their worldview, because you kind of get paralyzed with this fear of, like, what if I offend someone? What if I look either like, what if I look stupid, or just like, what if I hurt someone? What if it's taken maliciously that I'm asking this question? Which is not, like, it's a very understandable feeling to have, but at the same time, just from my personal experience, at least, like, I don't speak for every single like minority in the world out there, but just from my experience, it's pretty easy to tell when people are asking something from a point of, like, whether or not something is malicious versus if it's just genuine curiosity. Because 9 times out of 10, if someone's asking something, it is out of genuine curiosity. It's very easy to tell when someone is trying to be malicious. And so, if someone is asking me something out of genuine curiosity, I wouldn't get upset about that. At least, like, personally, I don't get upset about that, because it's just like, oh, I think that's a good thing, of, like, wanting to expand your worldview and your understanding of, like, cultures and people that you didn't necessarily grow up with or grow up as. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If any of you guys ever have questions about, like, things that I can speak about when it comes to, like, you know, my religion, my culture, my sexuality, like, I'm all for it. I don't mind. So yeah, that's my little Ramadan episode. I'm not exactly an expert. I'm just a regular practicing Muslim. I'm not, like, a religious expert or anything like that. This is just, you know, the life I've lived as someone who was raised Muslim. You know, it's kind of funny too. My family isn't, like, super religious either. My family isn't, like, turbo religious, because you know how with Christianity, right? People kind of have there's those, like, I think people call them, like, Christmas Easter Christians. I forgot what the term for it is, but it's the term for people that, like, only go to church on, like, Christmas and Easter. Like, they just celebrate, like, Christmas and Easter and don't really go to church every Sunday and don't do all of that. They're very, like, casual Christians. Like, there's a Muslim version of that too. It's probably not quite as common as it is in Christianity, but it definitely does exist. I'm just gonna switch over to the start count so you'll be without in chat mod for a second. Okay, thank you for letting me know. I will keep my eye out. Setter. Setter. I don't know what that means, but I will trust. It's like Christmas and Easter. Oh, you know, sometimes I can't read. Sometimes I forget that I'm literate. I feel like it happens to all of us. It's definitely not just me. It's totally normal to just forget how to read sometimes. No one spells it. Creaster. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, that makes a lot more sense now. But yeah, there is a Muslim version of it, and that's what my family is. We're Eid Muslims. We only go to the mosque on Eid. That's kind of it. We don't go every Friday like we're supposed to. We just go on Eid. Which happens twice a year. We go on both, because also that's another thing. People ask me sometimes, when's Eid? So there's 2 Eids, okay? There's 2 of them. There's Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. They occur at different times in the year, and they're celebrated for different reasons. Eid al-Fitr is probably the one that people know the most. It's the one, and it's also kind of the bigger one too. It's the one that happens at the end of Ramadan. It's the one that it marks the end of Ramadan. That's what Ramadan is leading up to. Welcome back. Thank you for being back. But it marks the end of Ramadan, and it's there. And then there's Eid al-Adha, which usually happens a bit later in the year. Usually it's a few months after. And that also gets celebrated. That one doesn't have like a whole lead up. It kind of just is a day that happens, like most holidays. Eid al-Fitr though is like the culmination of 30 days of fasting, and then you get Eid at the very end, and it's pretty sick. We go to the mosque, and then we have a lot of parties, and then we get presents. By presents, if you're old enough, like once you hit the age of like 15, 16, you don't get presents anymore, you just get money. Which I'm not even mad about. I'm like, yeah. Because usually if you're like a kid, you get like gifts. You get like toys and whatnot. Like when I was a kid on Eid, I'd get like toys. But then once you hit like teenager, 15, 16, they just stop getting you presents. You just get money. Which is pretty great, actually. And we eat a lot of really tasty food because it's a ton of parties, and because it's supposed to be like food is actually like a really big part of Eid, at least Eid al-Fitr. I mean, it's a big part of both, but especially the first one because it's supposed to mark the end of Ramadan. Like, you spent 30 days not really being able to eat during the day, and then Eid is when you go like absolute like ham, not ham. You go absolute. I say ham in the sense of the figure of speech. You're not supposed to eat ham as a Muslim. That's the other thing. I don't eat pork. It's kind of funny. I am a little bit selective about what things in Islam I observe and what I don't. Not super select, just in the sense of like, I don't know, man. That's the beauty of freedom of religion. I think it's pretty common for holidays. Yeah, teens get money. Yeah. Teens and adults, we just get money. Wait. Oh, I'm stupid. This is supposed to be facing downward. This slots in here. There we go. Excellent. This goes in somewhere. This goes in to, oh, this goes here, this goes here. I know now. I understand. But yeah. You kinda just get to go ham. I feel bad every time I forget you don't even. No, it's okay. I know a lot of people, like, because there's different religious beliefs that have different dietary restrictions. I think it's a very common thing where people forget, like, wait, is it pork or is it beef you can't eat? Or is it, like, you can't eat meat in general? Because a lot of the time, I do become, like, de facto vegetarian. Mostly because, this is Goof. This is Goof's stickers. Are there more stickers in here that I missed? Because I know those are his decals. I think these are all of Goof's decals. Yeah, I'm very used to people forgetting, like, the specifications of what I can and can't eat. A lot of the time, I end up becoming de facto vegetarian. Because a lot of the time, actually, when I'm getting something to eat, and I'm like, I can't eat pork. It's like, so you can't. So, no meat for you then. I guess you just get to be vegetarian. So I'm very used to just, like, eating the vegetarian option, and so a lot of people sometimes think I'm vegetarian. I'm not. I like eating meat. I like eating meat. It's just I only eat non-pork meats. So yeah, a lot of people do forget that I don't eat pork, or they get confused, where it's like, is it beef or is it pork you can't eat, or is it like all meat? Because with Hinduism, you're not supposed to eat beef. At least for some forms of Hinduism. Depending on, like, what form of Hinduism you practice. Some Hindus, it's like no meat, and some are like full vegan. Depending on what level of Hinduism you choose to practice. But the most basic form of Hinduism is no beef. For Islam, it's just no pork. We don't have that. We don't have that kind of thing of, like, you must be vegetarian. All Muslims is kind of just a blanket rule, no pork. Pork bad. It's haram. pork bad. Which is kind of a fascinating. The history of that is actually kind of fascinating. The quote unquote, like the religious reason is like, oh, you look Indian, you must can't eat beef. Yeah, that definitely does happen sometimes. People are like, oh yeah, you're South Asian, you can't eat beef, and it's like, well, some of us are Muslim, and also some of us. There's a lot of religions in South Asia is a big region. There's a lot of stuff, but I do get that sometimes. Sometimes it is like genuine. People forget which religion is the one that can't eat certain meats. Sometimes that does happen. More like a lot of the time that happens. But for me, it's nope. For me, it is no pork. And it's kind of the historical reasoning for it is kind of fun and funky. I think, at least for me, I think it's fascinating because like the like religious reason why it's banned is like, oh, pork is considered dirty, which is why Muslims can't eat it. Which is why Muslims can't eat it. But when you look at it like historically, something that's funny, not just I don't think is exclusive to Islam. I think this is just like a thing with religion in general, is that it is a way to control people, but it is also like something that can be used for public good. The reason why, yeah, for the chickens, a lot of, even though like a lot of, at least no religion spares them, yeah, no religion, except for some forms of Hinduism that says no meat in general. For them, chickens are spared. And I think there's also, I believe Jainism? It's another Indian, I don't know a lot about it, but I know the very basics, and I think they are vegetarian. I think all of, like, their general religious practice is being vegetarian. And I think some forms of Buddhism, like, I know a lot of Buddhist monks are vegetarian. So the chickens get to live there. But anyhow, back to like historical context, I think it's kind of fascinating that sometimes it's used for like the greater good. Like in Islam, cleansing cleansing yourself is a very big. Keep in mind, I'll only be speaking from the perspective of Islam because that's what I follow and what I know about. But at least in Islam, cleanliness is a big part of the religion. Like, you are supposed to basically be like, when you're praying, there's like a whole ritual of like ritualistic bathing, basically, that everyone is supposed to do. Being clean and like ritualistic bathing and like using specific hands for certain purposes and washing your hands and all of that stuff is like baked into the religion. Which I think is fascinating because it is also like very much, I think, also built on germ theory. I think part of why that's like, I think, but I think it is also like has historical precedent of like, yeah, there's a reason why like the plague didn't spread to the Middle East. I don't think that's the only reason, but like there's a reason why for a long time like the Middle East had a lower rate of disease than other regions, because at least in our religion, ritualistic bathing is built into it. People are just expected to wash themselves pretty constantly. Just like it's baked into the religious belief, which I think is fascinating. Which, not like, there's the religious like reasoning for it, but there is also like the public health reasoning for it, like, which I think is fascinating. Because also when you look at like why pork is banned in Islam, like in this modern day and age, we have modern technology and things like that, like sanitization and all of that stuff, which protects people. But back in ye olden days, pigs would eat literal garbage, and they like to the point where it was dangerous to eat pork sometimes. If you're not careful about how you eat pigs and whatnot, like you could get seriously sick from eating them. Which is part of why pigs are outlawed in Islam. Why pork is outlawed in Islam, because it used to be like just genuinely dangerous to eat. Back in ye old days, before modern meat processing. But it's one of those things that stuck around. Personally, it's one of those things. It's one of those things that I just like. That I just like, even though I tend to only follow religious beliefs that I think are just and fair. Like, that's the beauty of being your own person. I follow a very, like, I follow a very, like, I don't want to say watered down, but a little bit watered down version of Islam, because I'm not as strict about it. I kind of, like, really only believe something. I'm super, yeah, a lot of religious practices are like that. Yeah, that's why I say I don't think this is exclusive to Islam. I think a lot of religious practices, if you look back far enough, have origins like that, of like, well, yeah, I'm pretty sure, like, ritualistic bathing and not eating pork is baked in to Islam because it's just better for people to do that. People don't get sick as often when they bathe regularly and don't eat contaminated meat, you know? Like, who could have thought? Who could have thought? And I think a lot of religious beliefs are also like that, which I think is fascinating. That, like, yeah, it's very human. It's very human. It's very easy for, like, religion to kind of get swept up in this whole idea, like, in the mysticism of religion and kind of the supposed irrationality of religion. But what's important to know is that, like, I feel like nothing is truly irrational. Like, everything can be understood to some extent. Like, whether or not you think the justification is correct is a different story. Like, there are obviously parts of my religion that I think are wrong, but I understand the reason why, like, they were justified in the time, but obviously I don't think they're justified now, which is why I don't abide by them. And so, like, I think it's very easy to cast religion as, like, inherently irrational, when I don't necessarily think it is. I think religion can be a good thing, obviously when it's not, like, taken advantage of. Obviously, as long as it's not, like, taken advantage of, I think religion can be a good thing. Because it's comforting, it gives you, like, a nice spiritual framework to view life. That's kind of more so how I view Islam, at least. My relationship to it is a lot more akin to, like, I see it as a spiritual framework to live my life, rather than, like, here's a set of rules that I must live by, which is why I kind of pick and choose what parts of Islam I want to follow and what I don't. Like, it just depends on the person, and I think there can be good that comes out of it, because there's a reason why I still practice it. There's a reason why I still practice it. Even though, like, there's problems with every religion, there's also, like, there's a reason why they still exist, why people still find comfort in them, why people still follow them in the first place. And I don't think it's because people are, like, inherently stupid or inherently irrational. Societal needs very much affected religious practices due to the inherent nature of humans being involved. We'll always influence stuff like this, regardless of spiritual belief. I fully agree with that. I think I wholeheartedly agree with that. And, yeah. That's why, anyhow, that's why I haven't. Why would you think about just making your own personal religion, provided what would you think about making your own personal religion, provided you not doing it to make a cult? I don't know, man, because it's hard. Because it's hard. Making your own religion is, like, a lot. It's a lot, you know? People have been around for so long that there are people that have been thinking about whatever I'm thinking about, whatever, like, philosophical and spiritual things that I'm thinking about, guarantee someone else has already thought about it. Which is why I think it's easier to just, like, let someone else a few hundred years ago have, like, that's thought about it, you know? Why reinvent the wheel? anything that I could possibly think about, you know, religiously, spiritually, philosophically, has probably already been thought about by a different person, as is the nature of humanity. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll just listen. I mean, obviously I'm not just gonna like blindly follow and listen, but I think I think that there is value in kind of just listening to a range of different things, and deciding what I think is correct and what I think is not, instead of reinventing my own religion. And I grew up with Islam, because obviously, like, that's why I follow it. It's because it's what I grew up with. But I haven't really had a reason to like not want to be in it, because my relationship to it is, I'd say, pretty healthy. Like, I was lucky enough to grow up in a very I guess, religiously liberal family that wasn't super strict about it, and so I never really felt like pressure to follow when I didn't want to. It was always very much like my choice, except for when I was like 9 and being forced to miss my Saturday morning cartoons to go to Muslim Sunday school. That definitely did suck at the time, but otherwise, like, it was very much, I feel like I didn't have, I guess, the religious trauma that I feel like a lot of other people did. I kind of just didn't have that, because my family was pretty chill about it. What can I say? I left Christianity and practice eclectic paganism and kind of just pick and choose the practices that make sense to me. Yeah, exactly. I personally gel with the Greek pantheon because I like their stories and what the lore of the Greek gods teach. My religious practices are pretty much based on what works best for me. Yeah! No, like, I like that entire framework. That is very much like how I try to pattern my life of like, ooh, this is so, I'm off topic. This is so shiny now that I've polish blocked it. One thing about, anyway, back to Gundam, what the stream is actually about. What the stream is supposed to be about. One of the things that I've noticed about this guy is that I feel like I've also noticed with a lot of other master grades of this era, is that stress marks like hell. You have to be very careful. And even when I'm being very careful, it's still like annoying. There's a lot of stress marks on this thing that I've been trying to avoid, but it kind of just happens. And so, which is kind of rough because the blue is so gorgeous, but it gets stress marked so easily because it's not quite as optimized. Like, a lot more modern kits will be super optimized. A lot more modern kits will be like super optimized to like use undergates and things like that to minimize at least outward stress marks. Like, that's just one of the things that's thought of when engineering these kits is like, where are the nub marks going to be? But a lot of these older master grades, even though these are the V2s that are supposed to be the nicer ones, they still stress mark like hell because they have a lot of outward facing nubs, and you just have to live with that, which is rough. But yeah, I'm glad that it's becoming like a lot more okay to just kind of pick and choose a little bit like what kind of religious beliefs you have. Because yeah, like, I consider myself a practicing Muslim, but I would be lying if I didn't say like a lot of my other spiritual beliefs are like, I like learning about other cultures and spiritual beliefs and whatnot. Like, I would be lying if I didn't say like I also resonate with parts of like Buddhism and parts of like even pagan religions and whatnot, or pagan beliefs and whatnot. Like, I think they're fascinating, and I think some of them have some pretty good ideas about like spirituality and how to live life. And so even though I consider myself Muslim, that's not like the end all be all, you know? And I think that's okay. I think that's fine. Because at its core, like, Islam is what I personally gel with the most. But like, not obviously that's not the case for everyone. Are those the GodHands? Yeah. Fun fact about my nippers. These are children's GodHands. They're children's GodHands because I didn't want to pay for like full GodHands because I wanted to try them. But I didn't want to get like the real ones because they're expensive. So turns out the children ones, they have children's god hands that are pretty much just as good. Well, maybe they're not quite as sturdy as like the regular ones would be, but they're also pretty solid, and I have small hands, so it works out. I've got small hands, so it works out. And but one of these days I would like to upgrade. I'm looking into getting different nippers, because I've had these guys, they're good. I don't really have that many issues with them, but I can kind of feel like it dulling a little bit, and I can feel like it's not like I've had these for several years now. They're several years old at this point, and I kind of want to upgrade. I want to get some new ones. I want to get perhaps better god hands, but I've also heard a lot of good things about a few different types of nippers. I've heard Tommy has the adult god hand. Yeah, they're pretty sick. These things are great. These things are pretty great. Yeah, they are really good. Like, they're expensive, but I do think that they are worth it. Because even these ones, my children's god hands, they were not exactly cheap either. They're a little bit cheaper than, like, actual god hands, but I would not say that they are cheap nippers. I would not say that they, like, definitely did cost more than, like, the basic Mr. Hobby ones. I will tell you that for sure. But they are really good, and like, these ones are just getting kind of old. And I want to try upgrading. So it's not like super urgent. Like, I have like these nippers are still good. My children's god hands still work pretty well. Me just using I'm assuming you know why. Yeah, I do, because god hands are pretty sick. I don't know the exact mechanical reasons why. They're just better. Toenail clippers, rest in peace. But I definitely, when I first got into Gundam and whatnot, when I first got into model kits, the nippers I was using were like literally straight up just wire cutters. I was just using like electrical wire cutters for my model kits. And they weren't actually half bad, because electrical wire cutters have to be pretty sharp. But the problem is that they're not really built for plastic. Oh, let me tell you then. Yeah, they're not exactly built for plastic. They're more built for like rubber and wire and whatnot and metal. But I mean, they worked. But then I upgraded to my children's god hands, and it was definitely a huge upgrade. I was like, this is great. This is fantastic. I can't believe I lived like that. I can guarantee once you start using like god hands don't pinch, yeah. 2 sharp edges crimping together. God hands, one of the edges is dull. One of the edges is dull, so it's more of like a sharp edge that cuts into a flatter plane. Yep. But they're bulky and you can't do the double cut thing. That is true. Yeah, it causes less stress on the plastic. That's also why I want to get better ones. Because I also want to upgrade, because I feel like these things are just kind of dulling a little bit, and so they're causing more stress marks. Definitely these things can, because the other nice thing about god hands is that they can cut through like butter. It is fantastic. The feeling is really nice, and I think that's true with these ones, but I don't think they're quite as like, I guess, delicate. Cause less stress on the plastic. Yeah, I feel like these ones, because they're not like god hands, they're children's god hands that are a little bit cheaper and smaller. They're not quite as nice. And also because of that, I've had them for a few years and I can feel them like not being as good anymore. So I've also gotten recommendations for a few other types of nippers. I think one that I was looking at are like Dispay. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like a bunch of those are the letters. It's like Dispay. I think it's a British brand, because when I look it up, they always ship out of England, ship out of the UK. So I think they're a British brand. They're banned actually. They're a model kit tool related band, which I think would be pretty cool actually. But I've heard a lot of good things about them. They're like a little bit cheaper than GodHands, not by a lot, but they're supposedly a little bit cheaper than GodHands. But are also, I think, good, so I may look into them. If you guys have any other suggestions for like good nippers outside of GodHands, I would be happy to take a look at them, because yeah, I'm looking into upgrading mine at some point. I'm most likely will just get new GodHands, because that's just like what's most easily accessible to me. Like I can just go to the local hobby store and pick myself up a pair of GodHands for like $50 and have a good time. Like the stream. Like the stream is you not like having stress marks on your Gundam. If you don't, you like, yeah, like the stream if you like not having stress marks on your Gundam. Yeah. Don't forget, man. You had to remind me last week that I'm a YouTuber now. I have to say, don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to like this and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications, because I'm a YouTuber now. I have to practice the YouTuber spiel. Don't forget to like and subscribe if one like equals one less stress mark on your next model kit. Trust. Believe. I can definitely guarantee this. For every like, it means you get what you will receive. Not you will receive. You will have one less stress mark on your next model kit, which is very, very powerful actually. If I had one less stress mark on this guy, if I had even a few, I shall not. My goodness, need my time. I guess that is one way to view stress marks. You know what? Yeah, I guess that is a very creative way to view stress marks. You know, I always hated stress marks, but you know, I like let's romanticize stress marks on Gundam. Let's romanticize stress marks on Gundam. They're just love bites. That's all they are. So I will be the shell at the cost of making. Thank you. I appreciate it. I want my Gundam as stressed as I am. Yeah. See? It's just about personally connecting with your Gundam. Thank you for anyone who wants to support the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Yeah, no, like, liking and commenting and stuff like that, it does help. It does help. Unlike Twitch, you can do it for free. Unlike Twitch, you can do it for free, which is nice. Because I remember on Twitch, like, subbing on Twitch, like, costs money, or unless you use your Twitch sub, but, like, either way, it's, like, a thing, you know? And so now it's, like, don't forget to like and subscribe, which is kind of fun, because I probably watch a lot more YouTubers than I do Twitch streamers. I've definitely talked about this before, about how I definitely, like, watch more YouTube streamers than Twitch streamers, which is part of why I was very glad to make this switch. Because I just use YouTube as a platform a lot more often, and I'm more familiar with it. And hit that bell. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. I'm sorry. That was me practicing my YouTuber voice. That was me practicing my YouTuber voice. G-Witch completion status. G-Witch completion status is don't ask me that question. Don't ask me that question. Is my G-Witch completion status. If you share the live stream, like literally just copying the link, it tells the algorithm to show it to— Oh, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty sick. Yeah, just like, I don't know, paste it in your personal Discord channel or something. I feel like that's something— Am I like a freak for that? I feel like that's something that everyone does, right? Of having like a personal Discord that just like, you're the only— you have your personal server that like only you are in it. That I basically just use mostly— I use it a lot for like file sharing and note taking. One Piece completion status. Don't ask me that either. Don't ask me that either. Um, you know what I have completed though? Another webtoon. That's you know what I have completed though? Another webtoon. Um, that's what I've completed. Literally, all I have to do is copy the link. It doesn't need to be sent somewhere. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Sending this to my mom. Maybe don't. I mean, if you want to send this to your mom, you can. I like to be family friendly. I don't swear or anything. I just don't know how much your mom really cares about Gundam. Um, my mom doesn't care at all about Gundam. She's like, okay. No, she is like she is trying to be supportive about it. It's quite nice. She's like, oh wow, you made those? Which webtoon this time? Yeah. You know what I did complete though? A webtoon. I've been reading a couple of webtoons. I actually read the one that you sent me about I forgot what that one was about. It was about like it's so bad. I only remember that the male lead has like basically a secretary slash best friend. Salem is contracted to be family friendly, yeah. Don't worry. I'm not that crazy in general. But literally all I remember is that the male lead has like a best friend slash like henchman. My mom sees Gundam and as sending hard-earned lower-class money to Big Corpo. That's crazy, but she's not wrong though. She's not wrong though. Wait, I'm gonna go back and remember what the title of that webtoon was, because I did like it. I did like it. It was a pretty decent webtoon. I remember it, To My Husband's Mistress. That's the one. That's the one that you sent me, and I did read it. You know, it was a time, as webtoons are. But there's actually a different webtoon that I read that I actually quite liked, in the sense that I think it was actually, in the sense that I think it was like genuinely like an interesting story that had like, I think it's like kind of hard to sell. I think it's kind of hard to sell people on web. I know you. Yeah, listen. You know my taste well, and I appreciate that, and I trust you with that. I feel like purchasing anything sends money to big corporate. Yeah, like I go buy groceries and I give my money to big corpo. Like, well, sometimes I have to buy eggs, okay? And in order to buy eggs, I kind of have to give my money to big corpo. That's just how it is, unfortunately. But yeah. I feel like it's kind of hard to sell people on webtoons because webtoons have like a certain reputation. Not that it's entirely incorrect, because there sure are like a lot of trashy webtoons out there. Like a lot of them. I enjoy reading a lot of them too. Like I love my trashy webtoons that are just like kind of just pure fan service. Like I get it, okay? I get it. But sometimes, okay, there are webtoons out there that have like substance to them that I think are like good, genuinely good stories that have like fast, like interesting thematic elements and whatnot. And I'm like, oh, and whenever that happens, I'm like, wait, this is really, really good. I feel like nowadays donating money to the homeless is giving money to big homeless. Yeah. Even now, like, donating money to the homeless is like, you're just giving money to big homeless. You're just doing it for like clout or something. I don't know. But I read a webtoon recently. Like, when I say recently, I mean like yesterday. I finished reading it. It is fully completed. And it's one that I think is genuinely like really good and interesting, that I think like I would recommend it to people even outside of the fact that it's like like even outside of like webtoon fans, you know? Like I just genuinely think it's a good story. because it has a lot of very interesting thematic elements. It is very much still kind of like a webtoon romance. It is still a romance, but I don't think that makes it worse. I think like there is a little bit of webtoonism to it, but it's really not as bad as a lot of other webtoons. It does have some webtoonism to it, but it's really like not as guilty as a lot of other webtoons. But I still think it's really good. It's called Your Eternal Lies. It's about this lady. She is a convicted murderer of murdering she was convicted of murdering her husband, and thus sent to jail, and thus became a serial prison escapee. And thus has become a serial prison escapee. She just keeps busting out of jail. Disappearing for a few minutes. Okay, good luck, have fun. Am I supposed to keep that? I don't think I want to cut that out. I'm not going to cut that out just in case that's actually like... That's kind of the rough thing with a lot of these like polycap ones, is I kind of just like... I'm like, wait, which nub is important that I have to like make sure to not cut? And which nub is one that I like can get rid of, you know? And am I stupid? It goes this way. But where's the little thing that's... Can I cut this off? I feel like I can. I feel like I can cut off this part, because this is supposedly flat. Which means I can legally trim off this little bit. If I accidentally, like, totally borked this kit, I will be sad. But there's nothing a little bit of glue can't fix. There's nothing a little... See, that's, I think, one of my top advice when it comes to, like, model kits, is that, you know, there's nothing a little glue can't fix. Oh, now I get to cut out all of these guys. Lovely. This is the part I was not looking as forward to regarding this kit. But, you know, it's fine. We'll live. We'll live. But yeah. Anyway, back to the webtoon I read recently. It's called Your Eternal Lies. And it's about this woman. She's convicted of murdering her husband. And thus sent to jail. But she is also a serial prison escapee. She keeps busting out of jail, and because of that, they just keep sending her to like higher and higher security prisons until eventually they're sending her to like the middle of nowhere, like the prison for like the worst of the worst for like war criminals and whatnot. And that's like, oh man, that's not good. And they task a soldier to escort her there, because other context is that this world is like, the world building is also quite interesting because it is like it's historical fantasy, I would say. Falls in the realm of like historical fantasy in the sense of like, this is a made-up country. Like the location is not real. It's not based off like it is. It's a made-up country, but it's very like 1920s, like post-World War I flavored. Like, they got planes, they have very basic cars, like a big war just finished. Like, they just concluded this big war, and just like the way people dress and the way like society is, it's very like 1920s Europe flavored. But it's not, like, explicitly Europe. And also, witchcraft is real. That's the other thing. Witchcraft is real. Is the other part of this world building. But I think the way they do that is very interesting. Because you don't actually know whether or not witchcraft is real until pretty late in the story. Like, it's referenced a lot. But you don't, as the reader, you don't actually know if it's real or not until pretty deep in the story. Because one of the things that's very interesting is... the story has, like, probably one of my favorite examples of an unreliable narrator. The main character, she is convicted of killing her husband, but at the same time, she just constantly insists that she didn't do it. But she's like, I did bust out of jail. I did do that, but I didn't kill my husband. But also, like, not a single person, like, believes her. Everyone is like, well, she's a really, like, she's a really cunning and manipulative person. Like, never believe a word that she says. But she's like, well, I've never lied. I would never tell a lie. And so there's just, like, from the jump, there's this kind of, like, cognitive dissonance and, like, what she's saying and what we as the reader are being told about her. But then as the story goes on, like, you start to see, like, she starts to contradict herself, which is kind of fascinating because she's like, I would never tell a lie, but then you see her telling lies. And then she's like, well, what did I, like, and especially once you start getting her inner monologue, it's very, like, you can kind of tell that, you know, she says certain things and she's like, I know I'm lying, or she's like, I'm doing this with X purpose, but you can also kind of get the idea that she's lying to herself a little bit. But it's one of those things of, like, yeah, she's a very good, very interesting version of an unreliable narrator, because the thing that's interesting is until the very end, you kind of, like, truly don't know what's real and what isn't a little bit, because she's the one telling the story. But you can kind of tell, like, she contradicts herself, like, kind of often, but you can also kind of, but what's very interesting in how it's told is that there are these, like, kind of glimpses of sincerity, though. Like, even though, like, she kind of contradicts herself, there are certain things that she says that you're like, that she's like, oh, I'm only saying this to, like, manipulate someone. I'm only saying this thing to, like, manipulate them. But then when she's saying it, you're like, are you just saying that to manipulate them? Because that goes into, like, the other best part of this webtoon, and that is actually the male lead, the guard who's meant to escort her. He is a soldier. He's not just any soldier, he's a war hero of the war that just finished. He's, like, this great war hero, and everyone loves him. And he was kind of, like, the face of propaganda throughout the war. He was basically, like, the symbol of hope for this nation throughout the war. Which, is a time, and she, like, even to her, like, she knows that he's this epic war hero, right? But when she, like, actually meets him, he's kind of just, like, this very straight-laced kind of guy, like, almost boring. Not boring, but, like, he's, like, very strict, very, very, not apathetic. He's got that, like, resting apathy face, basically. He's very straight-laced to the point where it's, like, kind of ridiculous sometimes. But the thing that's really, I think the thing and the thematic element that's really interesting about the story and what it tells through these two characters is, like, this idea of, like, freedom, power, and public perception. Because one of the things you find out about both of these characters is that, so the main... Oh, he has a... yeah. Very self-controlled, yeah. That's very much what he's like. He's very repressed, but you can also kind of tell, like, he's also kind of just like that. He's also kind of just like that. Because of, like, the circumstances of his life as you learn more about him. But the thing that's really interesting about them is, so the main character, she is a convicted criminal, but she is kind of like the O.J. Simpson of her era. Like, her case is famous. Everyone knows who she is. Like, she's a media person. Like, she's a public figure in the sense that everyone views her as this, like, evil witch who killed her innocent husband. Because that's where, like, the whole witchcraft thing starts to come in, that I think is very interesting. Because it explores a lot, like, it actually goes into and explores a lot of these power dynamics and whatnot, and, like, the whole concept of, like, how people view witchcraft. because they're very much like accusing her of being a witch that does witchcraft. But she's like, I'm not a. She's like, I don't know what to tell you guys. I'm literally not a witch. Like, I can't do magic. And so for a long time, like, you don't, as a reader, like, you kind of don't know whether or not witchcraft is real, because people are like constantly accusing her of it. But she's like, I'm literally not a witch. Like, I don't know what to tell you guys. But the people like very much believe in witchcraft. Like, at least some people like believe in witchcraft and that it's real, but she's like, I can't do magic. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. But the thing that I think is really interesting and how they explore it is, I love when stories like set up this power dynamic, but like, I don't like when it's not explained. You know, like, I kind of don't like when there's kind of just fantasy racism for the sake of there being fantasy racism, basically. Like, people in this world don't like witches. They fear witches and they fear witchcraft because they think it's bad. But I like that the story takes the time to like explore what in society like defines that. Like, why do people hate witchcraft? Why are they so discriminated against? Like, why is this like a deep-seated belief? And so for a good chunk of the story, like, you're kind of like, is witchcraft even real? Like, is it kind of, it's viewed almost like a metaphor for like, it's very much framed as like a metaphor for marginalized people having power. Basically power that can upset the status quo. Because witchcraft, as the story tells you, is framed as like, the reason why witches are so discriminated against is that it means these women that are supposed to be powerless now have power. And people fear that so fundamentally because it's not just like anyone having power, it's people, if they had power, it would upset the status quo. And it very much like explores power and what that means through that, and like why certain people have power and why certain people don't, and why some things are feared and some things aren't. Like, the thing that's very interesting and how that's like told through the two main characters is that they're both basically like the same, they're two sides of the same coin. The main girl is a public figure that everyone hates. She's viewed as this evil witch who killed her innocent husband that keeps breaking out of jail. And they hate her, and she's like very aware of it. She's like fundamentally very aware of it. And that very much like shapes her character, which is fascinating. Because, yeah. And, like, you'd think, you know, her and the guard are opposites of each other because one of them's a criminal and one of them's a soldier that's, like, supposed to basically guard her, you know? But both of them, at their core, are people that have experienced being stripped of their humanity and turned into symbols. And they're both fully aware of it, which is fascinating because they're also like the only two people on Earth that can understand each other's experience in that sense. The idea of like being stripped of your humanity and turned into a symbol, because they're both aware of it and they both reference it. Like, she very much is like, at one point, like, tells him something about her life. And he's like, well, why didn't you bring this up in the court case? Like, this is different, like, this is new information. We might be able to get your, like, court case reopened and your trial, and have your trial redone, because this is new information. And she's like, it doesn't matter. People, because also, like, he does confront her. It's like, why do you keep contradicting yourself, basically? Like, why do you keep contradicting yourself? A little bit, yeah. I would say it does remind me a little bit of Tia and Cedric, but not quite. Like, the main girl is a lot more, like, lighthearted. she messes with people sometimes. Because she knows that people have this like, built-in perception of her. Like, and she also kind of knows that people need her to be this idea. People can't handle the fact that, like, not only, so her trial happened, like, during the war. Her perception was formed during the war. And because of that, people, like, the part of why her case ended up blowing up so much is because, like, people need someone to hate. They need someone to blame. Of course, there's like the enemy that they're fighting, but they need like someone to blame for what's wrong in the world, because you can't just blame like the other country for why a war is happening, for like all that's wrong in the world, basically, because obviously it's very tumultuous. It's a very difficult time to be alive in. War is not easy to live through. um and so it's so fascinating that like she is like fully aware of the fact that she is a symbol, and she actively kind of like plays into it because she knows that she plays this role and she has to. She has no choice. Simply because of like being unlucky. She could have just been like any other criminal, but she's not. She was turned into this public figure against her will, and now she basically has to act as this role for society. Like no one, she like very herself states like, it doesn't matter what I say, like, and it doesn't matter what I say, people already like don't believe me. They have an idea of who I am and what I've done, so it doesn't matter if I contradict myself, it doesn't matter what I do. And it's like also proved by the fact of how the soldier treats her, because he himself like has that perception of her, and she's like, yeah, I like, even you think that about me, that's why I do this. And he can't really argue with that because she's right. And that makes him think a lot about like, yeah, like why is she in this position? Because like he realizes kind of how similar they really are, because she's a lot more open about her feelings. She's a lot more like just says exactly what's on her mind a little bit. At least she comes off that way, while he's a lot more repressed. But she correctly identifies pretty early on that like, no, we're kind of two sides of the same coin. Because even though he's like supposed to be this positive figure, he's like the hope of the nation. Everyone loves him. He's a symbol of unequivocal good. That there's still an element of like, he didn't decide to live like that. He just happened to be like, he just was a pilot in the military, and because he was conventionally attractive, they just decided like, you get to be the face of our propaganda now. And because of that, like, people don't really like view him as a person. They have this idea of this like perfect war hero that defends this country, and like that's who he is. He's not allowed to like have flaws. He's not allowed to like act any differently than kind of how people perceive him, because he feels like this is now like a responsibility he's been given. You know, the great pillar of this nation can't crumble. And he realizes like, oh, we're actually quite similar. And the way the story explores that is so fascinating. I love how both the characters are kind of juxtaposed against each other, and how both their characters are used to explore this theme of like power, who wields it, and like societal perception. And it's so cool. I think it's really good. There's also like a lot more to the story than just what I've talked about. Like there's so much going on, and I would highly recommend it. I think it's really good. It's called Your Eternal Lies. That's my webtoon spiel, and that's also why no one's allowed to ask me about G-Witch or One Piece. But I think I've like kind of satisfied. I feel like for me, webtoons kind of come and go in waves. I'll have like a webtoons week where I just refuse to consume anything beyond like trashy webtoons. I'll refuse to consume anything beyond like webtoons. But I feel like I'm starting to exit. I'm starting to see the light on the other side of the tunnel. I can go back to reading things like for realsies. So, reading and watching things like for realsies. Though I will say I still have been keeping up with Frieren and Apothecary Diaries and Dungeon Meshi. The Dungeon Meshi anime is so good. I had a friend ask me, like, I had a friend ask me like, why didn't you tell me that Dungeon Meshi experiences a tonal shift? Because he dropped Dungeon Meshi like back during, I think, like a few episodes in, because he's like, it's kind of like slice of lifey, and wasn't really like a slice of life person, and was like, eh. But now that the story, by the way, if you don't watch Dungeon Meshi and you were kind of turned off by the fact that it's very slice of lifey, I can guarantee you it does not stay that way. Honestly, I think in general, even from the beginning, I don't think it was like super slice of lifey. It was definitely very much like an adventure show, but it was slice of lifey compared, at least in the beginning, compared to other shows because, you know, of how it is. But like the point that the anime has just gotten to is like when things really start cooking. It has like a pretty big tonal shift. Not pretty big. Well, it is a pretty big tonal shift. But I wouldn't say it comes out of nowhere. Like it's a tonal shift, but it's one that has kind of been being built up in the past 10 episodes, 10, 11 episodes. Because like it is kind of jarring. That is, it is a little bit jarring, but it is also like Dungeon Meshi has never been like a stranger to the concept of death. That's kind of been part of its DNA from the very beginning, is like this whole concept of like death and what is it, and how malleable it is in this world basically, and what that means. Like it's been hinting at it a little bit. Like I wouldn't say the tonal shift comes out of nowhere, but I can kind of understand if like slice of life isn't really your thing. The beginning of Dungeon Meshi is a bit slice of lifey, but fear not, like it goes crazy. The story is insane. Now is when it does like kind of a hard shift into like, oh, now we're in the meat of things. Now we're really getting into the weeds of the story. Like things are cooking, both literally and figuratively. I love Dungeon Meshi. It is one of my favorite manga of all time. I think it is absolutely one of my favorite manga of all time. It's really, really good. And honestly, I would always tell people to like, you should read the manga because it's really good. And you should support Ryoko Kui, the author of Dungeon Meshi, because she's very cool and talented. Okay, I did this. Okay, so I cut... What the heck do I do with this thing? Okay. Where any of this go? Where does any of... Yeah, I forgot. I'm trying to figure out how the heck this attaches to the head. At first, I thought this was like kind of tedious, but then I remembered I like tedious. I like tedium. I am a tedium enjoyer. Where does this... Okay, so does this part go into here? Oh shoot, I almost dropped his head. I think, does this slot into here? It should, right? Yes, I think that's where it slots in. So, I snip. I'm so afraid to cut this, because what if I mess up? I'm so afraid to cut this. Okay, I'm gonna take this off, so it gives me a little bit more space to work with here. I'm gonna cut this. Okay, we're gonna cut this. It's scary, but I've done it. I'm going to slot this into here. We're going to slot this into here. I think that's where it goes. I'm like 90% sure. Ooh. We're gonna zoom in so we can see that a bit better. If you break your fast early in Ramadan, you just lose. Okay. No, nothing wrong with like beating. Like I like talking about this. If you have questions. So when it comes to Ramadan, if you break your fast by accident, you can be forgiven. Like if you, like, I will not lie to you. Yesterday, I did accidentally break my fast, just like without thinking about it. Because it does just happen. And it's kind of up to you whether or not you want to keep going or stop. Sometimes if you break your fast, like that's kind of it. You can, by the way, there are makeup days in Ramadan. After Eid, you can make up days of fasting. It's kind of what you're supposed to do, is if you miss any days during Ramadan, you're supposed to make up the days you missed after Eid. So it is kind of like, if you break your fast early, you kind of just lose, like, rest in peace. But if it's an accident, like, it's not the biggest deal, you can just make it up. Or sometimes you can, if it's not like you didn't super break your fast, like you just had like a sip of water or something without thinking, you can just like keep going. Just gotta pray. Can't just keep going. But that is that. It is not like, it's strict, but it is like, if it does allow for like accidents and whatnot. Like sometimes accidents do happen. I've definitely been guilty of like accidentally, especially in the beginning, like literally yesterday, I accidentally broke my fast because I don't know, man. My work usually gives us free lunch on Fridays, and yesterday was pizza, and I just like wasn't even thinking. I just started eating a slice of pizza until I realized like, oh, it's Ramadan, I'm not supposed to be eating this. But you're not gonna like get sent to super hell for breaking your fast. You just gotta make up the day after Eid. You just gotta do a makeup day at the end, basically. Same thing, like you could take sick days. Sometimes if you're like sick, like genuinely you're really sick or something, you can take sick days. You just gotta make it up at the end. You just gotta make it up at the end. Yeah, like never, if at any point you guys have like a question about whatever, please ask. I like the engagement because it's good, but also I like interaction. It just is something that I think is fun, and I like answering questions. Regardless of what it's about. But yeah, I'm thinking about what manga I want to read next, because I'm like, there's a new manga that I've been meaning to read. It's like action adventure, but it's Josei. It's like the target demographic is women. So I'm kind of curious as to what that, I mean, I've read like, there are like other action oriented like shoujosei that does exist. Itsuari no Freya is real. Yona of the Dawn is real. Like I feel like a lot of people kind of just categorize shoujosei as like just slice of life romance when it's most definitely not. Shoujo and josei are demographics, not genres. There's romance, there's mystery, there's action, there's adventure within those demographics. I feel like a lot of the shoujo and josei that tends to become popular / get adapted tends to be like slice of life romance, but that is definitely not the end all be all. There's a new like josei oriented action adventure, like action fantasy manga that started coming out that I've been wanting to read because I'm curious. I really like a lot of like, I'm not the biggest fan of like battle shonen. I'm not the biggest fan of like battle shonen, as I feel like I've begun to build a reputation, at least amongst my friends and perhaps even on here too, of like being a shonen hater. which I can't say is an entirely incorrect perception of me to have, because I am kind of a token shonen hater. I don't really like shonen, and I know it's hypocritical of me to be like, but shoujo and josei is a demographic. It's unfair to consider it a genre. Which is true. And I don't think shonen is a monolith either. I don't think shonen is like a monolith either. Like, I don't hate every shonen. I like Chainsaw Man. I like Demon Slayer. There's a couple of things that I do like. But for the most part, I am a shonen hater. For the most part, I'm a shonen hater. A lot, like, it takes me a bit to convince me to get into a shonen. Like, you gotta do some convincing. Are you heading out? I hope you have a good time, Heather. Thank you for being here. But yeah. Chainsaw Man is sick. I love Chainsaw Man. I think it's great. It's shonen, and I still like it, so I can't just be completely cast as a shonen hater. I do give some things a chance, and I do like some shonen stuff, but it takes convincing to get me to read or watch a shonen. Because I do dislike most shonen. I do dislike a lot of the shonenisms. It's just how it is, okay? I'll be the enemy. I'll be the shonen hater. I did other things related to my job for a bit. No worries. You have like a job that you do. You have a job that you do, and you should do that. You know, do your, excellent advice from Salem. Do your job. One Piece, listen. I know One Piece is one of them. One of these days I'll read One Piece. It's already like a huge step that I've upgraded One Piece from like being on the don't even try list to the I'm considering it list. I just don't really like long-running things in general. I don't read a lot of long-running things in general, regardless of, like, One Piece. Like, I will like something more if it's short. If it's shorter. I tend to like things that are, like, sub 10-15 volumes. If it's sub 10-15 volumes, like, I'm in there. If it's, like, sub 100 chapters, I'm in there. Once it starts getting past that point is when I'm like, okay. I will need some watching a stream is technically part of my job. Excellent. See? I think that's what everyone should do. Just everyone's jobs should include watching my stream. I think that's a wonderful business model for everyone. Any job. I think only good things can come out of it. Because I think, at least, in my personal opinion, I think, in my personal opinion, I think my stream is pretty cool. They're going to be making a One Piece anime that's basically Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. I heard about that a little bit, that they're kind of like remaking the One Piece anime, which is kind of crazy. If I get into One Piece, it would be reading the manga. I just, as a person, especially if something's long, I would rather read the manga. That's just like a personal thing. It's rare for me to read long-running manga. It's even more rare for me to watch long-running anime. Because anime is like more of a time commitment. At least for me, it feels like more of a time commitment. Manga, I can kind of like pace myself and read it as I want to. Because for me, it's pretty normal. Like, that's how I got through Trigun, is I would just read it on my lunch break. I'd read like maybe one volume. I'd try and get through like one volume per lunch break. And I would be making pretty good progress like that. If I read something, I did the same thing with something similar when I was going through Golden Kamuy. Golden Kamuy is long as hell. That manga is like 320 chapters. It's like 30 something volumes. It's crazy. But I would read it basically just whenever I was commuting, because I would take a lot of public transportation. Speed read manga and miss things. That's crazy. I don't know if I'm guilty of speed reading manga. I'm guilty of speed reading a little bit. But my reading pace is kind of just like naturally very fast. I just read things really fast in general. And I'm still able to retain like a lot of information. To the point, like, sometimes, you know, if I have people, like, if I'm, like, hanging out with friends or something, and we're, like, scrolling through social media, or, like, reading something over my shoulder, it's like, can you slow down, please? How are you reading that fast? And I'm like, I just am. I just am. Okay? But I wouldn't say I, like, lose information by doing that. I just, like, read fast. And I like being able to control my own pace of things. I am guilty of watching videos at times 1.5 times speed though. I absolutely do that. The thing is, I don't watch, it's kind of funky. If I'm watching like a show, if it's a show that I like actually care about, I wouldn't watch it at 1.5 times speed. Like, part of it is I can't listen to music sped up. If I have to listen to music that's sped up, I feel like dying. But if it's just like someone talking, I speed it up. Okay, I speed it up most times. If I'm watching a YouTube video, that is at 1.5 times speed. Minimum. Sometimes I go up to 1.75 times speed depending on the video. If I really don't care, it's times 2 speed, but like that, I don't do that as often. I'm not that bad, okay? I'm not that bad. I'm just impatient. And a lot of people talk slow, okay? A lot of people talk slow. And so I speed it up. Because it just depends on like how fast the person's talking. Because there's sometimes when people like naturally talk fast, I'm like, okay, I can only do 1.25 times speed. But my standard rate is 1.5 times speed. Like, sped up, yeah. I kind of understand if people can't do it. It's definitely like a, you gotta get used to it. Once you start doing it though, you can't go back. I like can't watch videos in normal speed anymore. Like, I will get annoyed. Where I'm like, why is this so slow? Seed. Really? Oh, I forgot I zoomed in. I'm so sorry. Thank you for telling me. I forgot that I zoomed in earlier. It's me just cutting out these guys. It's me just trimming the little nubs off of these guys. Because I'm, once again, trying so hard to avoid stress marks. They're kind of inevitable, even despite my best efforts. And this is a little bit of a pain, but I am also an enjoyer of tedium. I like kind of just doing something like this, which doesn't require, it's a simple repetitive task that doesn't require a lot of thought and attention, and then I can just talk. Model update. Nightcore fans are seething. Listen, I think Nightcore is valid though. Nightcore is valid. Most music though, when you just like straight, because Nightcore involves like some level of editing. Nightcore is usually not just like just sped up. When I listen to most music that's like just sped up, like sometimes I forget that how is Goof doing? Goof is goofing. He's got a head. I'm making these little tubing parts, which is kind of crazy that you put each piece on individually, which is kind of insane. That I have to put each piece on individually. It's a little bit annoying, but it is also like kind of fun. I like doing these kind of stupid repetitive tasks. And so he has his little thing. Hopefully, I want to get the head finished today. I was worried if I'd have time to finish the head because, like, literally because of this. because of this. We're gonna zoom back in just a little bit. Literally just because of this tubing. Come on. Come on. There we go. Literally just because of this head and this tubing, I was like worried about whether or not I'd finish Goof's head today. Cause I was like, I have to cut out all of these things individually. And I'll have to do it again for his whip, which is crazy. I have to do it again. Because he has other like parts of his body that are tubed like that. And I will have to do it again. But at least for now, we've gotten this part of the head done. So hopefully, once the head is done, I also like that they include a lot of extras. They include extras of these little bits because they know that inevitably I will lose some. So they include more than I actually need, which I very much appreciate because I am stupid. I did drop a couple of them. So I was like, oh man, it's over because they're tiny and I have shag carpeting and I'm like, it's over. They're gone. But luckily, they give me a bunch of extras, so that's nice. For any of you guys considering doing Goof, any of you guys that want to build Goof, any part you see that has this kind of like patterned tubing, you have to put it together by hand. And I'm a tedium enjoyer, but I also understand that not everyone is a tedium enjoyer. So if you think doing this kind of thing is annoying, MG Goof may not be for you. If you hate the idea of having to do all that by hand, MG Goof may not be for you. But I personally do enjoy doing this like little tedious stuff. So I'm having a good time. I like Goof. I think it's kind of fun. I like when kits. Sometimes it depends on the thing. It depends on how it's designed. But sometimes I kind of like when kits include these little tedious things that make it feel more realistic. Like, if this were like a real robot that someone was built that like is being designed, it makes a lot of sense. Just cut them out beforehand and put them in a bag. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense to do. I just didn't do that. That makes a lot of sense to do. I just didn't do that. I also think Goof will be really fun to panel line. Goof has a lot of really fun and interesting little bits of molding that I think are cool. Not quite as much as I would say Astray. MG Astray has like crazy amounts of like molded pieces, like molded bits, which was very fun to panel line because panel lined Astray looks so cool. Goof doesn't have quite as much, but Goof still has some like fun little bits of molding on here that you kind of can't quite see. You kind of can't quite see super well, but once it's panel lined, it will definitely like really pop. So I'm looking forward to panel lining this guy later. I think it will be fun and funky. I'd forget to label my bag. Honestly, me too. That's exactly what happened to me. Yeah, I'm going to panel line Goop. Maybe I'll do this one on stream. I usually don't panel line on stream. I've talked about it several times as to why I don't, but I panel line with the dip ink, nib, because I just think it works better. I'm a control freak and I like the level of control that using like loose ink gives me. I have like a panel liner pen. I tried using a panel liner pen and I just didn't like it. I just didn't like it. I feel like using a nib and ink just gives me more control, and I prefer doing it that way. But I am also a freak, and because of that, it takes me forever to panel line, and it's a lot of just my face being 2 inches away from the piece to panel line it. So usually I don't think it's particularly interesting to do on stream, but like if the demand is there, maybe for Goof I'll do it. I do like doing finishing stuff. I do enjoy doing finishing work, so there is that. Okay, ooh, his little feather thing. I think it goes this way. I think it goes this way. I am trying to be so careful with his little piping thing, because it took me forever. How much am I supposed to? I don't think I'm getting there correctly. I think this is supposed to. I think this is. Yeah, this part is like really supposed to be in there. I think I may be doing something wrong. I think I may be doing something wrong. I'm gonna thin this out a little bit, because I don't think it's really sticking in there the way it's probably supposed to be. So we're just gonna hack away at it a little bit. We're just gonna hack away at this a little bit, and hope that I'm not like permanently messing everything up. But I don't think I am. Again, if all else fails, there's nothing a little bit of glue can't fix. There's nothing a bit of glue can't fix. I feel like a lot of people, at least for me, one of the things that I suffered from a lot when I first got into like model kits is this sense of like fear with my kits and being, there we go. See, now that looks correct. See, now that's like nice and snug in there. I'm glad I hacked away at it a bit. But I had this sense of like fear, kind of like changing my kits or like permanently messing something up and doing things wrong. I was like had a very strong fear of doing that when I first got into model kits and stuff. And it still is there a little bit. Gunpla building dread, yeah. That image, my new little chibi that Val has drawn of like me being very nervous is extremely accurate. That is me building model kits. Is I'm still very nervous. I'm still very like, oh shoot, am I doing this right? But I am starting to get over it a little bit in the sense of like, as I do more kits, as I've built a lot more, as I've built a lot more experience, I kind of have a better scale of like what things are catastrophic, like what things are kind of malleable, what I can mess with. Like I'm a lot more comfortable with Gunpla and model kits in general, and just like, oh, this piece isn't fitting quite right, I'll just hack away at it until it does. Or like, you know, even if I do mess things up sometimes, even if I mess things up, they're usually very fixable. Most of the time with glue. Like, yeah, it kind of sucks that like Gundam are meant to be put together. Yeah, it's why I want to figure out how to animate it. Yeah, it's so accurate. If you know anything about me, I am very I was gonna say neurotic. It's true though. I am quite neurotic at times. I'm a very cautious person. I'm a very cautious person, I would say. I make things harder for myself. On not even on purpose, but just like I have a talent for making my life harder. I just have a talent for like making my life harder for no reason, because I just get nervous. But with Gunpla at least, I've been learning to be more comfortable with things and be more okay with things and living, you know? And just like sometimes I will mess things up, sometimes it's okay. Like it's plastic. Like you can change it, you can mold it however you want to. You can change things and you can do things however you want. You don't have to be afraid of like, what if I waste this kit, you know? There's no such thing as wasting a kit. If you bought the kit and you're having fun with it, you're not wasting it. No matter what happens. Even if you mess up a little bit, you gotta glue a little piece in there. Like, it's fine. You gotta add some putty to fill a gap that you messed up. That's fine. Like, it happens. And I don't think you have to be super nervous about like doing model kits, but I also understand, especially when you're very new to it, it's kind of inevitable. Like even I still do that sometimes of like, I'm nervous and I'm like, oh shoot, am I doing this right? But I've been learning to live with it more. And I'm glad. And now we get to attach his head onto his body. Look at that. Look at that. One of the things I didn't quite realize is that his head, oh, well, it is a different shade on here too. These are like different shades of blue. I don't know why I didn't quite like realize that, but it is like even on the illustrations and in the anime, like it is like that. But I kind of like that they're very bright colors, which is I feel like not as common for a lot of Gundam. to have like this kind of just like bright in your face colors. I feel like a lot of them tend to be more neutral tones. They tend to be like darker colors or more neutral colors. But I like that. One of the things that I love about Goof is that he is electric blue, and by God will you know that he is electric blue. And yeah. You know, this is kind of funky. Usually I try and like usually I know this is meant to go until 1 o'clock, but usually it does. Honestly, usually I feel like I go overtime. But I don't know, I want to keep going until 11, but I feel like this is also kind of just like a natural good winding down point. I wanted to finish his head today, and I'm glad I did. We've got a head and a torso. Next week we will be beginning on the legs. Very exciting. Soon he will be mobile. And it means I'll have to do more piping nonsense. Except I think it's longer for the other one, because this is like also I love when instruction guides have these like full color illustration pages. I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit. Have these like full color photographed pages. Like, it's so cool. He's got his like, you see him in action and you see him in the anime, and I love that it tells you like the context of who Goof is and what he does in the anime and his pilot and all of that stuff. I think it's really cool. I love that it does that. I love that you get like all of this. Yeah, the little piping at his waist down here. I'm going to have to do that again. That'll be fun. But yeah, over here I will have to do this again, but I guess we'll live. And it starts at 11. It's almost 1. Yeah, I don't know why. I was like, what if I finish like 5 minutes early? I know that. It's like, oh man, but what if I finish like 5 minutes early? But either way, I think we've made some good progress. I'm very happy with Mr. Goof and how he's going. I think he's a very solid kit. There's some tedium and whatnot that is just like baked into some of these older master grades, but I enjoy it. If you're not a tedium enjoyer, maybe avoid kits like this. But one of the things that I really like about some of these older master grades is kind of how much they try and capture the actual building process. They really try and make you feel like you're putting together a robot. Like, one of the things that's funky about Astray is it has these like, I keep saying it ends at 11. I don't know why I said that. Listen, I forgot how time works, okay? It happens to the best of us. Sometimes we just forget how time works, okay? But yeah. I mean, we start at 11 and end around 1. Yeah. But what was I saying? Yeah, Goof is fun. Astray was pretty funky because there was entire like molded mechanical pieces that aren't even visible on the outside. Like, you spend all of this time putting together these like intricately molded mechanical pieces, and then you put the armor on top of it, which I think is cool. I think it's sick. I like that kind of tedium that makes it feel more realistic, and even though it is kind of annoying to like do all of these individual little piping pieces, I think it's still like fun and it adds to the experience. And that's been my experience with Goof so far, but hopefully I'll keep enjoying it, because I am a Goof enjoyer. And yeah, I think that's a pretty solid place to put us. I will be back next week at 11 a.m. EST, and I will be continuing with Mr. Goof. That will be continuing the docket. I thank you, as always, thank you to everyone who's tuned in. I hope you've had a good time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Saturday. And yeah, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Yeah. Like, actually, it does help us. It helps with growth. We would very much appreciate it. Also sharing, yeah, just copying the share link for the stream. And afterwards, you can comment, once the stream is concluded. And, yeah. As always, I shall see you all next week. Bye-bye!